Hello, my name's Humphris and I've been a guild member for about 20 years. I spent almost 12 years on the events team, and during that time as well as my other duties as an events assistant, I also demonstrated a concept that became anatomy of a layout. And that's what this video is all about. And it's basically a training tool, an informative tool, and possibly even um, an insight into the dark arts of how you make a baseboard and then how you fill it with all your scenery, etc. So, without further ado, I'll take you along the layout as it is, and then I'll go it down into a little more detail on how exactly it performs. So here we are. This is the whole of the layout as viewed by the public on the demonstration stand. As you can see, it's around about 6 foot long, and it literally has a start to finish aspect about it. I'll just pan along for you just to get the rough idea, and then, as I said, I will show you how the various parts come together. So let's start down at the beginning, the bones of the anatomy. And as you can see, here we've used a straight butt joint type of frame using 2x1 par, readily available at most timber merchants and DIY stores. Some people prefer to use a 3x1, gives you a little bit more depth on the construction, and if you're using maybe a tortoiseshell motor, then the depth of the baseboard may want to be deeper. Some may go as far as 4x1 to safely protect the tortoise motors, particularly on exhibition layouts. When this was constructed, I only incorporated Pico motors, so therefore the framing was basically designed to carry those, of which we'll go into in a little while. In the next section is the basic baseboards types, and you can use any sort of flat surface, providing it obviously reasonably takes a screw, a pin, glue. Now I've used any sort of thing I had at hand at the time, but as you can see, I started using OSB board, which is used mainly in roof construction, and nowadays they use them in these new wooden skin buildings. Then I've used chipboard, ply, and MDF. Sundelia was very popular at one stage. I didn't have any Sundelia to hand, but it's very much like MDF. The most preferred one at nowadays seems to be the plywood 9mm, which generally is the most. It's lightweight. It's very stiff. Makes good for exhibition layouts where you're moving the parts of the layout at all times. So once we've decided on our baseboard, we then start going on to planning. Now you can use, like in this instance for the points, you can use printed diagrams, or you can go to drawing on paper. If you were planning a whole layout, you would generally cover the whole baseboard with lining paper. Is a good idea that you can buy quite cheap. Line the whole baseboard, and then you can draw on it with pencil, rub it out to your heart's content till you're happy with the track plan. Once you're happy with the track plan and you've got the basics in place, you can then move on to laying your track. And as you can see here, if we start here, this is where you can use copper clad sleepers and rail soldered directly to form your track. The advantage here is when you're making track and points, you can do it to the configuration of your actual track plan as opposed to relying on ready to run track that you purchase and fit, and it has a set geometry, particularly when you're building goods yards, factory yards, that sort of thing. Sometimes the self-built rail and points work a lot better. So once we've got our track in place, we look to things like the points, powering the points, and here we have a Pico point in place, operating on a surface mount with the micro switch on the top, which operates the signals or indicators on your control panel. On the other side here, you might well just make out that buried below that piece of perspex is a undermounted point, which is mounted directly to the point itself, the point motor, and that sits in a small well within the baseboard. I'm not going to go into too much detail about wiring up points now, because this is basically how you set up a layout and the routines to get from the basic frame to the finished article. So therefore you can see further along here, there's a small control panel, and there's a set of buffers put into place there to see how they sit. And then as we perm across towards the rear of the layout, we can see how we're using a polystyrene medium to form a landscape. There are several other techniques of forming a landscape, but this is one where we're recycling our old bits of polystyrene we get with various packaging, and it's shaped either with a proper polystyrene cutter or with a carving knife, or even the blade from a craft knife. Once the polystyrene has got to almost a desired shape, that's covered in plaster of Paris bandage, or any of the other sort of mediums that are readily available. From there, obviously, we then apply scenic materials, a back scene, and if we look, then the same goes with the track. We then finish that off with the various scenics, and if we look now, you can see once the locos go into place, ballast and greenery all added, along with fencing, and as we progress we use electronics come into place with signals, and I think you get the general idea of how that is, what concept we are looking at, and a little bit of dramatic license as we show a split between going from preparation through to the final article. Now, there are lots of things on the market, and I generally explain to people that it really is carte blanche, but if this gives you a rough idea of how a layout is put together from start to finish, then I've achieved my aim. As an entertainment factor, I've got a small control panel, and that as well, again, it demonstrates with not too much electronic knowledge I've put this together, and it does work. I can operate the signal, and I can demonstrate the points working. And I've shown two techniques of a push to make switch and buttons, which is an older technique, but once again, some people prefer. The only thing I haven't demonstrated is the stud and pin method, but it's basically all the same. As I say to everyone that comes to view the layout, it really is a personal choice as to how you like to do things. It's a personal choice with the timber you use, it's a personal choice with the baseboard material you use, and the various items of ready to run track, rolling stock and scenic items. So how do we start? Well, we start with the frame, and that's put together using butt joints as the easiest, basic screws and timber. Create a frame. Onto that you put your surface you're going to use, and then from there, as I say, into planning. And people ask me, well, what do I do? I don't seem to have a lot of space. Well, even in this small space here at the end, within a foot and a half, 2 feet, we've got a set of points, we've got a siding. So something as long as 6 to 8 feet in the living room or in the kitchen or in the back bedroom will not take up too much space. So in conclusion, there are now, thankfully, thanks to YouTube and the likes and demonstrators, everything you see on anatomy is demonstrated, or there's a film about. So I don't necessarily need to go into how the whole thing is put together and the techniques I've used, because there are lots and lots of demonstrators and there are hundreds of videos out there in the internet, as well as you'll see during this virtual show put on by the Guild. But if this gives you, when you're starting out, an idea, and shows you it's not too daunting, because you go to an exhibition, and this is probably one of the reasons why I did it. You go to an exhibition and there are some absolutely stunning and wonderful layouts, and the detail and what is achieved is phenomenal, and it's eye-popping to the average man, boy, woman, child in the street. Sorry, in the street. So what I wanted to do was dispel that myth that even a simple modeler like myself with no great skill can produce a layout. And let's face it, when you build a layout, you're building it to your own standards, your own personal choices. Yes, it's lovely to look at an exhibition layout, but a lot of the times, particularly when I've been exhibiting my own layouts, they say, well, how was this done? How was that done? Well, hopefully, anatomy of a layout shows you how, and dispel, like I said, dispel some of those fears. So I hope you've enjoyed the video presentation, and it inspires you. If you've never built a layout, it inspires you to crack on with maybe doing it first time. I mean, people start out with just a set of track on the top of the table, or God forbid on the floor on the carpet. But once you want to get something fixed, permanent, and it never stops growing, you can always add something to it. You can always take something out and put something else in, remodel it. So in the world of railway modelling, it is your oyster. You can do as you please. So once again, I hope you've enjoyed the presentation. This is Humphris saying thank you for watching.